In this lesson, we're going to consider why Luke wrote the book of Acts. Scholars have proposed numerous theories about the purpose of Acts. Mark Allen Powell, in his book What Are They Saying About Acts?, helpfully groups these theories into 6 categories. We should be open to the idea that more than one of these purposes was in the author's mind as he wrote. First, some have suggested an ironic purpose for Acts. The book was written to heal divisions and promote unity in the early church. In the 1800s, F.C. Bauer put forth the theory that the early church was split into 2 streams, those who followed Peter and those who followed Paul. In his view, Acts was written to reconcile these 2 factions. More recently, Paul Ochtemeier proposed that Luke paints an idealistic picture of the harmony of the early church so that his readers would set aside their differences. The second theory is that Acts had a polemical purpose. Luke wrote the book to refute teachings that he considered unorthodox or heretical. Charles Talbert, for example, proposed that Luke was refuting Gnosticism, which was an early Christian heresy that became full-blown in the 2nd century. Few scholars, however, view this as the primary purpose of the book. Jack Sanders has argued that Luke was anti-Semitic and therefore paints a consistently negative picture of the Jews in both of his books. A third category is that Acts has an apologetic purpose. It was written to convince Roman officials to grant Christianity official status as a legitimate religion. B.S. Easton and Ernst Henken are notable proponents of this theory. To accomplish this, Luke shows that Christianity was an outgrowth of Judaism, not a separate entity, and therefore it should have the same protections granted to Jews. Jesus and his followers are consistently portrayed as innocent of any political subversion. A problem with this view is that we're not certain that Rome actually classified various religions as legal or illegal. There are a couple of variations of this theory. Paul Walaski has suggested that Luke's apologetic is actually directed toward Christians in order to inculcate in them a positive view of the Roman Empire. He wants them to see that being a good citizen is not incompatible with being a good Christian. Others think that Luke's apologetic purpose is not directed toward the Roman Empire, but toward Jews or Jewish Christians. Robert Brawley and Jacob Yervo have proposed that Luke is defending Paul against attacks by Jews or Jewish Christians who considered him a heretic. F.F. Bruce and J.C. O'Neill think that Luke's purpose goes beyond the apologetic. He actually wants to convert his unbelieving readers. Most scholars, however, think that Acts is aimed primarily at Christians, since so much of it would not be meaningful to outsiders. Others have suggested that Luke wrote primarily to Christians in order to strengthen their faith and offer them pastoral guidance. Philip Essler argues that Luke tries to show Christians that their faith in Christ is not incompatible with their allegiance to Rome. Robert Maddox thinks Luke is addressing doubts raised by the rejection of the gospel by Jews. Luke is trying to convince his readers that Christianity is the fulfillment of God's dealings with Israel. Some scholars have focused on the theological content of the book of Acts. The first redaction critic of the Gospel of Luke, Hans Conzelmann, argued that Luke wrote his 2 books to address the delay of the parousia. In his view, the fact that Jesus did not return within the first generation of believers created a crisis of faith in the Christian community. Luke addresses this problem by dividing salvation history into 3 parts: the period of Israel, the period of Jesus, and the period of the church. He wrote Acts to show how the period of the church began and to describe what faith and life should look like during that time. Most British and American scholars do not see much evidence in the New Testament to support this theory of the delay of the parousia. I. H. Marshall has argued that salvation is the theme that runs through Luke's two books. Robert Karras has proposed that Luke used a promise fulfillment theme to highlight the faithfulness of God. Now it is up to you to decide which of these theories do you think provides the most comprehensive explanation of why Luke wrote the book of Acts.